Hi team, welcome to another video of the nutrition lecture series. This one is an instructional video that's designed to help you through your last nutrition assessment, the dietary analysis assignment and a case study. There's a few things you're going to need to successfully complete this assessment, and I'm going to take you through some of those things now. So each of you are going to be given a case study client. You can see here's a list of case studies possibilities here. These are all real ex-students or ex-clients of mine that have come in for dietary analysis. So if I take one at random here, let's take client 5, Anna. This is what you'll be given. You'll be given 4 documents to start with here. The first thing you'll be given here, if you look at the Excel document, we open it up, is a dietary log. And if we look at this dietary log here, you can see down the bottom on the tabs down here, you've got day 1, you've got day 2, day 3, and a weekend day as well, and then an extra tab here for a recommended day, which we'll come to later. In terms of what's on this dietary log, you can see here it's a list of all the foods consumed. Anything that has a calorie content associated with it is written down here. These things have an estimate of size or amounts associated with them. So 3 pieces of toast you see there, 1 bagel, 2 Tangelos, chocolate yogurt, and the values have either been taken off the labels themselves, or where labels don't exist, like on fruit and veggies and that kind of thing, we've used this thing down here which you'll see called the concise food table. Now we'll get to the use of that soon, but effectively this is a database of common foods in New Zealand, from everything from bickies and cereals, breads, through to fruit, vegetables and meat, etc. Personally, I like to use food labels wherever I can, so we get the actual amounts from the foods that we're actually eating. But when we're struggling to get a label for something, I think this is the next best place to go, the food and nutrition database, the concise food tables from New Zealand here. And you can simply Google this. I think it's just called Concise Food Tables New Zealand. And it's updated every year or two, and you can download it onto your computer and have it as a searching resource there. Okay, but we'll come into how to use that and what you can yield from it in the later parts of this assignment. So we've got our dietary log here. It's giving us information on individual foods consumed, and if we go to the bottom, it gives us the totals of the calories, fat, grams, carb grams and protein grams consumed, and over here you can see a macronutrient split going on there with, you can see the majority of this day's diet being carbs, fat and then protein. So obviously to get to this point with a client, you're going to have to get them to write down everything they eat, the timelines, etc. The other thing you'll see on this table is the exercise that's performed on that day, so we can start to look at how exercise impacts on their day and where they're eating around that exercise. You can see on each day here the exercise has been put in at a time with what it is and the time frame associated with that exercise. Okay, so that's the baseline data that you're going to be working off. If I go back into the folder of information that you're going to be given, you'll see there's some other information here. If we go on this Word document, client 5 Anna here, it's just got some basic details on the client itself. 19-year-old female, 61 kilos. There's the weekly exercise that they participate in. They have a weight loss goal in this occasion here to lose just a minor amount of weight, 3 kilos. And under special notes, you can see she can eat anything. She's not allergic to anything or doesn't have any major dislikes, which means you're free to choose what you like when you build a dietary day for her. So that information there we'll be using in a second. The other main document that you've got on here is the template for the nutrition assignment. Okay, I've got one open here from earlier, so if I just open that up. Effectively, filling in this document here is how you're going to pass the assignment. You'll see that it's got some different sections, tasks in here, everything from looking at different dietary analysis methods through the client information, and then we start the analysis on the types of foods that are being eaten, fat and carb consumption, the amount of food eaten across the 4 days, their timing of intake, when they eat the most, when they eat the least, and how they're eating around exercise. And it all culminates in a set of recommendations that we would be able to pass on to the client, and an example eating plan for a day that would take care of all the recommendations that you've suggested. So over the next little bit in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to complete the different stages of this, and then of course you'll go away and apply what I show you here to the client that you've been given to work with. So we'll just keep this one open as we go. Alright, the last of the documents in your little folder of things that you're going to have given to you here is a servings document. I've got one open here, and this is just called Healthy Eating for Adult New Zealanders, and is a document that sort of gives you some more details on how to count up servings of fruits, vegetables, grains and cereals, milk and milk products and meat. Okay, so it's a bit of a skill initially to work out what a serve actually is. It's pretty easy to identify where things reside, but we'll be using that document for a specific part of the assessment too. The only other thing I'd have handy from your nutrition booklets from earlier in the course, worth pulling out the nutrient guideline tables, where you can work out the amount of carbs, fats and protein that your client needs. So with those documents all in front of you, time to get started. There is one other thing you want to get access to, and that is on the Moodle site. I've placed a PowerPoint document there called Nutritional Assessment, and I'll just show you the key elements of this before we kick into it. So obviously there are many different ways of assessing nutritional status. We've got to respect our professional boundaries as personal trainers and understand that we have a limited role in helping people with their nutrition. Anyone who has a serious weight loss issue to contend with, anyone who has metabolic disease such as diabetes to contend with, anyone who has issues that can be inflamed via poor nutrition, things like rheumatoid arthritis and so forth, are sort of outside of our professional boundaries, and we need to refer to the appropriate professionals, dietitians, nutritionists, with a little bit more training in this than us. But for the average person involved in the gym who's just looking for some general results, we can certainly help them with their nutritional process to make sure that they're getting the best out of their training and their recovery, and therefore achieving what they want to achieve in the physical domain. So there's a lot of different ways. What we're interested in though is the historical assessment or dietary records side of things. It's not our place to physically examine people. It's not our place to take blood and urine samples, and even if we did, do we know what to do with that information? So that's for the docs, that's for the nutritionists and the dietitians. I want to introduce you to 4 different dietary methods really quickly. So you can see here, multi-day diet records is the one that we're actually going to be doing. 4 days of dietary recall. We'll also look at a shorter version of that, which is a 24-hour recall, food frequency questionnaires, and food history interviews. Now, we would have gone through this in class, okay? And what I just want to remind you is the assessment portion of this part of the assignment and what your takings from this lesson need to be. Okay, so looking at this document here, you can see that task 1 is a little bit about each of the dietary analysis methods that are on that PowerPoint slide show. Multi-day diet logs, 24-hour recall, food frequency questionnaire, and the dietary history. Now all I'm looking for in here is a list of the strengths and the weaknesses. Okay, so if you were to bullet point strengths and weaknesses, you go back into this document here, and you'll see that multi-day diet records, it has uses and what it records. And on the next slide, it has a bunch of strengths and weaknesses. So you can basically summarize those strengths and weaknesses for me for each of the different dietary methods. Okay, so you'll see here, if I just tick through, dietary records, 24-hour recall, strengths, weaknesses, you can see there on the subsequent slides. Okay, and then we've got food frequency questionnaire, strengths and weaknesses, and the dietary history, strengths and weaknesses. You're just taking that information from that particular presentation there and putting them in under each of these here. When you've done that, just have a read through them, and I want you to give an opinion on which is the best to use in a PT setting. So have a look at the uses, have a look at what it actually pertains, and have a look at what information you can yield from each of those. And just think about the PT setting, the amount of time you can really put on people to do this kind of thing without becoming a huge pain. Which one do you think is the best to use in a PT setting? And if you give me some basic reasoning behind that. Okay, I'll give you a pretty strong hint here. The reason we've chosen the multi-day diet records option is because it's probably one of the best to use in a PT setting. Okay, and I'll leave you to think of the rationale behind that. Okay, next step, introducing your client. So you can see here their tags here for name, age, weight, exercise of the week, etc. You know that you have that information on the little document over here pertaining to your individual client. It's simply a copy and paste over, replace the areas you see in here with that key information, and that part is complete. So a simple transfer of that information there. And then it says, task 4, collect 4 days of dietary data. We've done that. That's the Excel forms that we have over here. Okay, with the client data, that's already done for you. So nice and easy. And if we move down, probably the first of the things that are going to take a little bit of effort from you is task 5, client energy requirement calculations. Okay, so using the information here on your client, you've got their age, their weight, the amount of exercise they do, their weight goal, and these special notes there. And that's all you need to construct some calculations around energy requirements. For that, you're going to need this table here. Okay, and we're going to work out the carbs, the fats, and the protein. So let's say we take an example client. I'm not going to use one of the ones that one of you potentially has. So let's say we've got a client there. The first thing we do is we need to work out their total amount of exercise done in the week. The type of exercise is also important, but first and foremost we look at the number of hours. And let's say that person's doing 8 hours of exercise a week. They're doing a combination of sport, let's say basketball, and weight training. And we come into here, we'd find on the carbohydrate tables 8 hours a week, puts them into the 7 to 9 hour bracket. 6 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight. Whatever number you come up with, I suggest reducing this by 0.5. We know that these tables come out a little high. So we'd be left with 5.5 grams per kilo of body weight. Now there are some provisos there. You'll remember from class we talked about if a person's training is predominantly weight training, you might take off an additional 0.5. If it's all weight training, you might take off an additional full number from this one here, because weight training is not as calorific as cardio and sport-based play. So let's say with this person, the majority of their training is basketball related, and they're doing a couple of weight sessions a week, let's say 2. I would be going with 5.5 grams times their body weight. Now I want all working for your equations thrown into this area here. So we'd start with carbohydrate, and it would say 5.5 grams times body weight. This person happens to be 85 kilos. It gives you an answer there that you work out. Obviously once you've got that answer, you times it by 4 to get calories, and that will give you a calorie amount for carbohydrates. You go and do, using the same tables, the way that we practice in class, work out protein and fat requirements for that person as well. Put them in. You'll end up with a total calorie number after you've done your protein and fat. I want you to then check the percentages of the carbs, protein and fat as a percentage of their daily intake based on the equations that we've practiced in class. Now at that point, it's really important that you check with me. Okay, so check these off with me. I don't want you going forward in this assessment until those things have been checked, because if we run forward with incorrect data, then everything we compare against that data is skewed. So check those equations with me. All I need to know is who is your client. I have the data on those clients and what your calculations and workings were. Alright, so that's step 1. And once you've done that, guys, and I'll just pull one up as an example here. If I was to do the workout here, 5.5 times 85 is 467, and we can round that. Let's say that's 468 grams of carbohydrate. When we times that by 4, okay, to get calories, that would be 1870 calories of carbohydrates. Okay. Now, what do we do with this figure? When you go back to your tables of your diets here, so let's say this is that person's diet over here, and what we can then do is put in the amounts in grams of the carbs, fats and protein up the top here. So I'll just double check what that was, go back in, find it in here, 468. So 468 grams. Straight into the table there, and what you'll see as soon as it's plugged in, the calories have worked themselves out here. Once I've added in the fat, let's say their fat was this and their protein was this, I'll get a total calorie amount for the day that they should be eating. I can then run down and have a look at the comparison against what they did eat. And if I look down here, this is the totals that they actually ate. And this says to reach the goal, they need to eat minus 305, which means they've gone 305 calories over. If we look at the top, the calorie rating here that we'd worked out was 3205, and this person's eaten 3510, going 300 calories over. Where have they gone over? You can see quite clearly 60 grams over in fat, which is not ideal. 73 grams under in carbohydrates from the total that we worked at above, and 14 grams over in terms of protein. So already I can make a little distinction about this diet, that the person is eating slightly too much on this day at least, predominantly coming from excess fat and not eating enough carbs. So once you've got those figures and you plug them into tables, I want you to actually have a little scan through the diet, okay? Just like you would if someone handed you a diet log in the gym and you had a couple of minutes just to scan through it. And as I scan through, what am I looking for? I'm looking for the amount of food eaten, the timings of the food. So the first things I'll notice about this diet here is there's a decent brekkie here at 7, there's a mid-morning snacks, there's a good lunch in there, and there's a good dinner. So it looks like they're eating plenty of food just by the look of this. If I look at the gym and look at the types of foods in there, just briefly, at the carbohydrates before the gym, looks like a decent whack of carbs coming into the gym work there, and of course some protein powder after, not too bad either. I then look at things like fruit and veg. Yep, it looks to be plenty of fruit and veg around here, some good fruit in here, some more fruit and veg in here, and at every sort of interval of the day there appears to be some form of fruit or vegetable in there. Okay, maybe dairy, if I just take a touch on that, I can see some dairy there, a bit of cheese in there as well, so it looks like they're covering most of the food groups there, and most of what I'm seeing here is pretty healthy. I did notice just down the bottom here, of course, at 8 o'clock there was a little bit of a snack binge going on here with some peanuts, chips and chocolate, so that's probably not ideal depending on what this person's goals are, but that's what I've noted out of this for a start. So I go back into my document here, and you'll see that after I've done the calculations and checked them off with me, my task 1 of the dietary analysis is a brief overview of the client's diet following 4 days of eating. Like I said there, I've found a couple of bullet points that I can write here. The client seems to eat plenty of food, in fact too much. Now that's only 1 day, you've got 4 days to look over, so you want to get an overview of those 4 days. I see plenty of fruit and veg, most food seems healthy in nature, with the exception of the late night snack. They appear to be eating too much fat and not enough carbs. So that would be an acceptable amount of information to write as a brief overview there. So maybe 3 or 4 points, overriding points, without doing too much analysis, just having a look at it, the same way as you'd brush over a program and look at a program for someone and make some determinations from a brief viewing. Okay? Alright, next step, nutritional value of food eaten. You can see some nice colourings on this table here, and we're going to utilise these colours soon. Grains, cereals and breads, fruit and vegetables, dairy, meat substitutes, high calorie, low nutritional value food. So this is effectively rubbish food here. Now, a really useful thing that you can do here to do this analysis and make it easier is if you reduce the size of that page, guys, and you slide it all the way to one side of your page, it'll open it up to half the page or half the screen. If we do the same with the dietary log and we take it all the way to the side, it'll open that up to half the page as well. Now I can work between the two documents without one disappearing. So the first thing I want you to do here is identify where these food sources are on the diet over here. So I'm going to start with grains and cereals and breads. I'm going to go through and dictate what is a grain, cereal and bread. So obviously rolled oats is a cereal. If I go up to the top here, you'll see there's a paint fill colour option here, and there's all your colours, and I'm going to choose yellow to match the yellow in this table here. Okay, so I'm going to go down and note all of the grains, breads and cereals. So this is anything that's flour-based, grain-based, whole grain-based, etc. So Cuppa Rolled Oats, Sultana brand, yep, is predominantly grains. Okay, we're going to leave out nuts and those kind of things for a separate analysis. Ryvita crisp breads, definitely from grains, multigrain bread. And what I'm doing here, instead of going up to the top and hitting this every time, I'm just going Control Y, which means do it again, and it's a nice way of sliding down and doing all the grains first. Okay, so we've got tortillas, wraps, we've got bread, we've got Ryvita crisp breads, and we've got some cereals up there too. Okay, so we've identified them. Next, I'm going to go through and identify the fruits and vegetables. So this includes fruits, vegetables, dried fruit. You can even include things like juice and chips, hot chips, apple pie, but there's a little caveat to that one soon, which I'll explain. So, quarter cup of raisins, there's a carrot there, there's a banana, a little bit of lettuce, an apple, banana, and again we've got some lettuce, capsicum, carrot. We don't count things like tomato sauce or sweet chili sauce, that kind of thing. We leave that. It's not a no longer in its sort of vegetable or fruit form. So again, like I said in my overview, it looks like they're eating plenty of good fruit and vegetables. You can see a lot of green through this diet. And in a healthy, active person's diet, this is what you'd expect to see. A good balance of sort of yellows and greens smattered throughout should make up the majority of what they're eating. Next is dairy. So you can see we're obviously looking for milks and cheeses and those kind of things. So we've got the milk there, we've got some cheese. We're not putting in mayo. Common misconception, mayo is usually oil and egg based, and egg has nothing to do with dairy either. So we shouldn't be putting in anything to do with eggs under dairy. I'll explain where that comes in soon. Similarly, peanut butter doesn't have butter in it, as many people think. It's just obviously ground down peanuts, so we leave that one. And protein powder, yep, we could if it was whey protein. Look at this as potentially a dairy serve, but we're actually not going to count protein supplements as dairy. They're going to be considered a meat substitute because of the protein that they yield. So as I go down, that is effectively it. Dark chocolate, no, 10 grams of dark chocolate is not going to constitute anything meaningful, and there's not a lot of milk in dark chocolate anyway. So that's the blues done. And that leaves us the browns for meat. So as we go down, we've got some shaved ham. We've got some protein powder, giving a decent amount of protein. We've got some grilled chicken. And that's it for the meats as well. So you can see the colours sort of coming together there. The last thing I've got there is high calorie, low nutritional value food. So we're talking crap really here. And it's easy to become a little bit too tough in this regard here. So you can see I've got a third of a cup of peanuts. So if I told you these were unsalted sort of raw peanuts, then I wouldn't consider them crap. Potentially if they were salted, roasted sort of ones, you might put a serving of rubbish in there for those. You've got almonds, certainly okay. And then these tiny little bits of mayo and pickle and things, no, I'm not going to worry about them. Oh, I just noticed though, I missed a rice cracker there. That should have been a grain there as well, coming from rice and flour. Okay, so things like peanut butter, spreads, those kind of things I'm not putting down as crap, unless we're eating a ridiculous amount of them. So in this diet here, I'd be looking at potato chips as one. And there is some salted peanuts and some dark chocolate as well. Now, would I count that as 3 serves? Typically I'm looking at around 200 calories would constitute a serve. So I might go with a couple of serves there. You can see between them 100, 200, about 300 and something calories between the lot there. So 1 to 2 serves of crap would be my suggestion for this one here. Okay, so if we've got takeaway food, if we've got alcohol, each item of takeaway food, each item of alcohol would be considered a serving of crap. And then I'll leave it to your devices to determine whether you think something is worth putting down as a serve of crap. Now, I know some people put things like muesli bars and that kind of thing, but as long as it's one a day, something like that, I wouldn't be considering that a serve of crap. This is really high calorie food with little nutritional value there. Okay, so one other thing to note, and I'll just see if I can pull up an example page here where there might be an example of what I'm looking for here. Yep. So be aware that some things are listed as total food items rather than listed separately in terms of the sandwich that was on the one you just saw over there, broke up the bread and the meat and the salad. But you go to McDonald's, for example, and you get a cheeseburger. The cheeseburger comes with multiple parts to it. So the way that you would have to go about showing this in terms of serves is you go, well, a cheeseburger has bread. It also has the meat. It also has the cheese. And it's also a serving of crab. So I've gone along the line here and just indicated that this thing is going to be counting up different serves of things when we get to the count up portion. Okay, you'll notice that I left out the fat and carb column here. That's really important for later in the analysis when I show you something else we're going to be looking at. So I want you to keep these two columns here clear. You can go as far along to the side as you wish, putting the different colours in here. I also want to show you how to attack something like small chips. So like I said, chips can count as a serve of vegetables once in the day, but you'd also have to consider them a serve of rubbish, for example. Coke, of course, is going to be rubbish, and 12 white clouds, of course, rubbish as well. And just an interesting thing when you see it on here, some of your clients might have some alcohol, we binge on the weekend, that kind of thing. Just want you to note the calorie content down here. This is the calories that come from carbs, which is predominantly all you're going to find in alcohol. But alcohol has its own calories, and so you can see the extra calories listed there. So about 1,800, 1,900 calories over half the day's intake had from 7:30 to 8 in the form of these RTDs here. Add to that the cheeseburger meal, and you're looking at 2,500 calories coming after 6:30 p.m. in this diet here. So you can see how the bad stuff sort of adds up really, really quickly. Okay, so just going back to my example one here. Let's say now you've gone through and you've coloured everything as you need to. That's not the end of the story. You can see over here there's a table, and this table has these servings sources listed. It also has the recommendations from the National Food Authority around what we should be having in a healthy and balanced diet. So you can see grains and cereals and bread serving 6 to 10, fruit and vegetables 5 to 8, dairy 2 to 3, meat 2, high calorie, low nutritional food. Yeah, you can get away with something on a daily basis, really, as long as the rest of your diet's in check. Little caveats here, you can eat far more than this. Fruit and vegetables, you can get more than that without any significant negative effects. And some of you athletic people, and particularly bigger athletic people that need huge amounts of carbs in a day, like this bloke over here needing 468 grams of carbs, may have to go above 10 grams of 10 serves of grain, cereals and breads to get that. Dairy you can also go over a fraction as long as it's mainly from low-fat sources, and of course meat, if you've got higher protein needs, you may need more than 2 serves to get there. But bear in mind that protein adds up from almost everything. As you can see here, there's protein in a lot of these food items here. So the next thing we need to do, guys, is pull out this thing here, the Eating for Healthy New Zealanders. And as we go down, it's going to go straight down to, let's start with the vegetables and fruit, right? So we know we need a variety of vegetables and fruits, and we know the main suggestion that we hear all the time about eating 5 plus a day, eat 5 servings of fruit per day, fruit and vegetables per day. And it's suggesting breaking it up into veggies and fruit. But realistically, if we have a range of different things and we go beyond 5 plus, we're looking okay. If juice or dried fruit are consumed, and also things like hot chips or apple pies or stuff like that, then you can count it once as a serving of fruit and veg. However, everything else after that falls into those categories gets counted as a serve of crap, not a serve of veggies. What constitutes a vegetable or fruit serve? So a medium-sized potato, about 130 grams, or a similar-sized piece of kumara, or a whole carrot, or a couple of yams, or taro of about the same amount. Any other cooked vegetables, so your beans, your peas, your corns, that kind of stuff, you're looking at about half a cup of cooked veggie. Okay, and this one here says half a cup of salad, but it actually means a dense kind of salad, mixed salad, like things with carrots and tomatoes and pepper and all that kind of stuff mixed in with the lettuce. If it's just pure lettuce, I'd suggest probably 2 cups would constitute a serve, and then a whole tomato would be in there as well. You've got an apple, a pear, banana, and orange. Any of those main fruits counts as a serve, or a smaller fruit like an apricot or plum, just double it up. to get the same serving count. Half a cup of fruit salad, half a cup of stewed fruit, 1 cup of fruit juice, you can count once, and about 1/4 cup or 2 tablespoons of dried fruit would be considered a serve as well. Okay, so using that info, I'm just going to do a wee practice on this one here. If we were to go down and look at the serving counts here, obviously we've already identified them as green, which makes it easier. There's a 1/4 cup of raisins, so a serve. Let's see there, 25 grams of dried fruit. 1 raw carrot is a serve for up to 2. Banana is a serve for up to 3. And that's a tiny amount of lettuce in a sandwich. I'm not going to count that as a serve. I might call it a bit and add it to something else later if I had more bits, but it's not a serve on its own. So I'm still at 3. An apple makes 4. A banana makes 5. 2 cups of lettuce, yep, I'd count that as 6. Oh, there's another bit in here and another half here. So maybe all those little bits together we count as another one. Okay, so if we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Counted 7. Going back into my table, and I'm saying on day 1 there were 7 serves of, not grains and cereals, 7 serves of fruit and veggies, and you'll do the same. You can pause this now and get over to your document, do your colours, and add up your fruits and veggies, and then you can chuck that in, and then we'll come back and have a look at the next one. Okay, so next I'm going to look at grains and cereals. So go down further in this document here. Now, worth noting that these serving suggestions are there for the micronutrients that they provide. So following these serving recommendations would sort of ensure that you're getting a good spread of vitamins and minerals from the food that you eat. You can see here, choose at least 6 servings of breads and cereals every day, preferably from whole grain sources rather than simple sources, and 1 serve is constituted by a single dinner roll, a muffin, a piece of bread, a cup of light cereal, so that'll be your corn flakes, your rice bubbles, your sultana bran flakes, that kind of stuff, one cup. Denser forms containing oats, etc., half a cup would be fine. So that's porridge, oatmeal, muesli, half a cup constitutes a serve, and that'll be cooked. A cup of pasta, a cup of rice, and we're talking about once cooked there as well. Okay, so a cup of cooked rice, a cup of cooked pasta, not the raw form going in. And yeah, I tend to stay away from the plain sweet biscuits and count them as a high calorie one. But any other grains, rice crackers, maybe a full row of rice crackers is a good option there to think about. And the other one that crops up quite a bit is muesli bars, maybe a half serve for a muesli bar. Anything else, you sort of just use your judgment a little bit here. So things like tortillas, we see down here, obviously tortillas like a piece of bread, and if you wanted to check the yield, you've got 45 grams of carbs there compared to 2 pieces of bread at 35. You'd have to say at least 2, if not 3 serves of grains there. So let's have a look at what we've got. A cup of rolled oats, you can see a cup of oatmeal is 2 serves. 1.5 cups of sultana bran would come under the lighter cereal version. So I'm at 1, 2, 3.5 serves at the moment. I should mention there, everything in yours will have a number next to it. 4 rye Vita crackers there yielding 26 grams of carbs. I'd call that a serve. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.5, 4 serves. Each piece of bread is 1, 5, 6 serves. 7 serves counting the rice crackers, 8, 9 serves. 10, 11, 12 serves there. And I don't have to go any further because once I go beyond sort of the upper limit there, guys, I'm just going to put in 10 plus. Like I said, not necessarily a bad thing, considering this person needs a considerable amount of carbs. If we look down, they're short by 73 grams, so it could have gone a few more serves. But one thing that you would note in here, a lot of bread in here. Bread doesn't yield as much per serve as, say, a cup of rice or pasta and that kind of thing. So maybe the option here would be to look for denser forms of carbohydrates. You don't have to eat as much food to get what you need. Alright, so moving on down the list here, we're looking at dairy next. Okay, so back into our helper document here. Milk and milk products. Choose at least 2 servings of milk and milk products, preferably reduced or low fat each day. A glass of milk, 250 mils, would be considered a serve. A pot of yogurt would be considered a serve. And 40 grams of cheese, butter, or any other dairy-based substance, about 40 grams is the amount that we're looking at for a full serve. Okay. You can also, if you're not able to consume lactose there, you can look at soy milks and almond milks and those kind of things, fortified foods with about the same amounts attached to them. So a glass of almond milk would dictate a serving as well. And that's really based on the calcium content more than anything else. Back into the table, we identified 2. We've got a cup of milk, 1, and we've got 50 grams of cheese. 40 was a serve, there's 1. So I'm going to go back into my table and I'm going to whack in 2. Meat and meat substitutes. Down we go. So choose at least 1 serving from this group each day. Forget the slices. People slice meat differently. About 100 grams of meat. Okay, so 100 grams of meat constitutes a serve. If it's been made and you're getting it served to you in casserole mince form, if you're getting it in spaghetti bolognese form, that kind of stuff, then if it's a wetter type product, then probably double that figure for your serve there. Okay. Everyone I've talked to has agreed that this should read 2 eggs and not 1. Okay. There's good vitamin mineral content, but really 2 would be needed to get anything like what you'd yield from a piece of meat. Fish, 100 grams as well, and then you've got things like dried beans, and these are really wild beans we're talking about here, black beans, those kind of things that maybe vegetarians might substitute for protein sources, etc. Okay, and then a couple of drumsticks or a chicken and egg would be considered a serve as well. Again, using a bit of judgment call there, anything yielding about 25 to 30 grams of protein would be considered a serve. So as we get into here, you can see the 3 slices of shaved ham yielding 4 grams of protein. There's going to be a bit. There's not much to that at all, so we're certainly not calling it a serve. The 20 grams yielded from the protein powder I would call a meat substitute. So any protein powders taken with the intention of getting a protein serve out of it would be considered a meat sub there. So that's 1 serve we've got there, and 100 grams of lean chicken breast, another serve that we've got there. So going back into the table, we've got 2 serves of meat. High calorie items we've put in red, and you can see down here a cup of chips, we'll call that a serve, and maybe I'll combine these 2 things here and say, look, I had 2 serves of rubbish there at the same time. So I get to the end of that, and I'll just bring that up. Now I've got a day's summary of the eating, and the next step would of course be to do day 2, day 3, day 4. Now I'm not looking for perfection here, I'm looking for estimates, and it should be fairly clear at the end of the process, if you do it thoroughly, how the person's eating and how they're going in terms of these serves. And what you'll see if you run along the lines is you should be able to give a summary to me here. So if I was summarising day 1, whereas you can actually summarise all 4 days together here, I'd be stating something like eats plenty of grains and cereals along with bread, fruit and veggies are consumed at the correct level. He eats a desirable amount of dairy and meat, but over consumes high calorie snacks on this day. So you can either do it day by day like that, or if there's a pattern emerging, then just talk about it across the days. But make sure you talk about each one of these key 5 factors there. Alright guys, so probably a good time to pause the video and get off and start doing that on your diet, and then tap back into this video and see what the next bit is. So the next part of the video here, I'm just going to knock this down to the next page here, is we're going to start analysing fat types and carb types. And you can see what we're analysing here. It's saturated versus unsaturated, and simple versus complex carbs. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do again is go on and start identifying some of these things on my practice one here. That's why I've left the fat and the carb columns open when I've done my colourings here. So you may need to go back into your course notes and look at some of your, maybe some of the video lectures from earlier in the course to reacquaint yourself with what a saturated fat is and what an unsaturated fat is, but a good starting point here. Remember, animal products are primarily saturated fats, so we're talking about things like dairy, we're talking about things like white meat that you see on beef, We're talking about things like pork belly. We're talking about things like chicken skin and those kind of things. So I think nothing's 100% saturated fat, so not even butter and those kind of things. So we're trying to identify the things that are predominantly saturated fat, even if they yield very little fat. So choosing a colour we haven't used yet, we're going to go down and identify the saturated fats, predominantly saturated fats in these food items here. So as I go down, I've got oats coming from a grain source, definitely unsaturated, cereal, definitely unsaturated. And I get to the milk, and the milk is, if it's got any fat, is saturated. And I'm going to choose this sort of purpley colour here just to indicate just the saturated fats. So by doing this, we're saying whatever I highlight is saturated, and whatever I leave is unsaturated. Okay? So peanuts, nuts, nut oils are unsaturated, so the almonds and nuts go by. Fruit and veggies are unsaturated as well. And I get down to the rye crackers, that's whole grains, that's unsaturated. And there's some cheese, so I chuck in some cheese. Next, bread, typically unsaturated. Ham, saturated. Mayo, saturated, coming from egg. Going down, peanut butter, peanut oil, unsaturated. I guess whey protein would come from a milk source, being saturated. Things like the breads and that are usually made with oils, like tortillas, so flour and oil, so not saturated. And I am going to put in chicken. I don't know how this was prepared. If it had skin on it, then it probably is slightly more unsaturated. And chicken's really almost a 50-50 in terms of saturated and monounsats. But we'll put it in just to keep it consistent in terms of meat. It's not a lot of fat anyway. If I keep going down, I've got more mayo here. Potato chips, anything fried, deep fried, produced will count as a saturated or potentially trans fat. Peanuts, fat is unsaturated, and then the chocolate, if it had any milk, for example, we chuck it in there. So I've identified the saturated, predominantly saturated fats in this diet day. Now, it's not a case of how much pink is on there, it's what it yields in terms of amounts. So we've got almost nothing there. We've got 16, we're getting towards 17 and 2. 19 and 3, 22, 23, about 27, 28, 32, 42. We're looking at about 45 grams of fat if I add up those things there. And you can see as a weighting against the total amount of fat, 45 grams of fat is not much compared to what was actually eaten. So it's safe to say that on this day, this client ate, while they ate too much fat, definitely ate more unsaturated than saturated fat. So it's clear from what we just looked at that the client ate more unsaturated fat than saturated. So I'd make a statement here, on this day, the client ate far more unsaturated fats. I want 2 examples of each, so 2 examples of saturated fats eaten were, and I had cheese was one of my big ticket items there. If I go back in, remember I'm just looking for the ones that I've highlighted. Potato chips would be in there too. Potato chips. Again, not saying they're 100% saturated, we're just saying they're probably predominantly saturated. Bad fats. I also want to give 2 examples of unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats were nuts. And if we go back in, this is obviously anything that's not highlighted here. I'm looking for some decent numbers. I've got bread, tortillas there, nuts. I've got some cereals up the top there, which probably yield some, sultana bran, that kind of thing. So, whack into there again, and sultana bran. So using that as a model for day 2, day 3, day 4, you can now pause the video, get into your table, highlight those saturated fats, add them up. Is it more than half? Is it less than half? Is it about 50-50? That's the statement I'm looking for, and then 2 examples of each types of fat eaten. Okay, next step is to do the same thing, but with simple versus complex carbs. What I'd like highlighted on the table are all simple carbs. Simple carbs come from things like refined grains, like white flour, or wholemeal flour. They also come from sugar, and things containing lots of sugar. Remember, simple carbs is not the same as high GI. It could be laden with fat or protein as well. It's the type of carb I'm interested in here. So if I look down the list here, rolled oats are whole grains. Bran, sultana bran, even though it's been reconstituted, quite high in complex carbs. Yes, the raisins would pick up the simple carbs, but I would say still predominantly bran, more so than raisins. Milk is a simple carb. milk-based products. So I'm going to go with a purple type colour here. Okay, peanuts, obviously coming from nuts, is not going to be simple. Almonds, no. Raisins would be simple. Dried fruit. Fruit and vegetables, typically complex, unless of course dried and concentrated into a juice. So banana is complex, the rye crackers are complex. Things like the cheese, no carbs in there, so no point talking about that. Now multigrain toast bread, white bread, wholemeal bread, definitely simples. Multigrain toast bread is kind of halfway between a whole grain and a simple carb. So what I'm going to do there is I am going to colour it, but I'm only going to colour it with a lighter version, and it's going to remind me to just count half that figure. Okay, and that could be true also of things like muesli bars, where you might just count half the figure. It's obviously got oats in it, but it's got a lot of honey or syrup and stuff holding it together. Don't worry about these tiny little amounts. Okay, so if you're agonising over them, stop. Tablespoon of relish, like sweet pickle, yep, that's going to be sugar. You can almost guarantee that. The mayo, anything that's got in it, will be sugar as well. Rice crackers, simple carbs. There's the bread again, with its half count. Anything in this peanut butter is likely to be a little bit of sugar added, unless it says, of course, no sugar on it. Protein powder, again, would be a little sugar, if anything, in there. You've got the white or wholemeal tortillas, not whole grain, so definitely simples. And then again, we've got tomato sauce, sugar, sweet chili sauce, sugar, mayo, potentially be sugar too. Potato chips, no. Still coming from potato there. Although, worth noting that if it's twisties or burger rings or those kind of things, obviously those things are going to be reconstituted into chips that we know them of. They'll be potentially from maize, corn, or flour, so you would call them simples. And the chocolate's going to have sugar. So again, I'm not counting the number of times the purple comes up. I'm doing a count up of what it yields. So let's call that round up 13 plus 24 is 37. Half of that value there. 47, 54, 60, 62, 82, another 17 there is about 99, 100, 101, 146, 147, 150-ish, 160, about 165 out of a total 394 is less than half. So I'd go into here and say on this day, my client ate slightly less simple carbs than complex carbs. So again, I'm looking for a statement. I'm then looking for two examples of each. Two examples of simple carbs eaten were. Let's get back into the table again. What have I put in there? The ones that have highlighted, look for some bigger numbers. So we've got tortillas and we've got rice crackers there. That'd be two good ones. Tortillas and rice crackers. Two examples of complex carbs eaten were, I had my oats and salt on bread. Okay, again, use that as a model. Do the same thing on the next 4 days and you're good to go. Section done. Alright, next one, really simple one. Again, I'm going to go back to my half screen. So I'm going to bring up this and bring up my day's eating, move that over the other side of the screen there. Okay, now I'm interested in the numbers at the bottom of the tables here. Okay, so I can put in the recommended numbers. I've already punched them in at the top. They're my numbers from the equations that I did earlier. So my calorie number for this guy, for example, was 3205. The carb number was 468 grams. Okay, the fat number is 85 grams, and the protein is 142 grams. So that's what we worked out he should be eating. And if we look down the bottom now of the day's eatings, we can see what he actually ate. And I can see these figures here. So day 1, if this is my day 1, 3510. And just round. It's easier there. We've got carbs at 394. We have fat at 145. And we have protein at 157. And again, these are all gram figures to match. Now, we do the same thing day 2, day 3, day 4, and what we'll be left with here is a pretty clear indication of how they're eating against their macro requirements. So if I carried on this trend here, I'd be able to say eats up to 300 calories extra a day. He's short by, roughly 60, 70 grams on carbohydrates, way over in fat, getting towards double the fat intake you should be having, and protein is not bad at just a few grams over there. And of course you want an overview of the different days in your summary here. So if I was summarizing this day, like I said, I'd say he is eating about 300 calories in excess of recommended values. This excess is coming mainly from fat. He is under eating carbs and eating around the right amount of protein. That would be an example for this day. He is eating, and try to get the spelling right. Okay, so a little overview. Nice simple one there. We can state categorically how he's doing in terms of calories eaten, carbs eaten, fat eaten, and protein eaten. Not a good time to pause, chuck that info on the table, and write yourself a quick summary. Alright, next section, I'm going to whack this one down to the next page, is all about timing of intake. Skip meals. The questions I'm asking here is, do they eat 3 meals a day? Do they have a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner? Are those foods just eaten at that time, or are they actual meals? Do they have a cereal? Do they have eggs? What do they have for breakfast? It's not just a muesli bar or up and go. It's an actual meal. So if I dive into the day here, have a look at this one here, we can see that there is clearly a breakfast at 7 o'clock. There is clearly a lunch here with sandwich and apple and rice crackers at 12:30, and there is clearly a dinner here with the tortillas. So I'd go through my 4 days and I'd say, do they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Is it at quite consistent times? And is it a meal rather than just a collection of little snacks or something like that? Okay, so really nice, easy section there where you're just stating. Now some of you will just simply state, yes, eats 3 meals a day, or doesn't skip any meals, and that would be fine. For the next one, we'll want to go back to our half and half scenario here. And this one here, we're interested in when they eat the most calories or least calories in the day. So you'll see it's broken into breakfast, morning snacks, lunch, afternoon snacks, dinner, and late snacks. So what we could do now is we take our cursor and we go into the calories column here, and I look at breakfast and I go, right, how many calories in that breakfast? I simply highlight the calories here. Down below, you'll see here the sum has added up, 532.75 calories. So I'd be putting in breakfast 573 calories. So morning snacks is anything eaten between breakfast and lunch. So we look at the 9 o'clock and 10:30 snacks here, and we take all of those calories. We look down and we see 970 calories eaten there. So a big morning snack sort of intake, 970 calories there. We can comment on that later. Lunch is obviously 12:30. Take all of the calories from lunch, pop it on the table at 449. Afternoon snacks is anything eaten between lunch and dinner. So again, I've got 3 o'clock, and I've got a 5:45 snack there as well. That yields 459 calories. And then we've got dinner, yielding 753 calories on the roundup, and a late snack here as well, 346 calories. Okay, if we do this over the 4 days, we're going to be able to see, oops, you'll have an extra table on your one there, an extra column. Let's do that now. So if we do that over 4 days, we'll be able to see a pattern, or if a pattern emerges here. Do they have a similar sized breakfast every day? Are they eating more calories towards the end of the day or start of the day? You can see that big morning snack thing. I'd want to know if that's consistent with what's going on across the 4 days. You also start to think about, is it the right place for them to be eating these calories? All right? Is there a decent calorie spread between breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And what about exercise? We start thinking about, okay, there's a lot of calories here in the morning, but there you see 11:30 in the morning exercise. Is that okay because of the exercise that's happening there? So is there a pattern to the calorie intake? When do they eat most? When do they typically eat least? Or is there no pattern at all and it changes from day to day? Some brief comments on that is what I'm looking for there. So you can see all of these things in the table format are the kind of things you can share with the client, and they can see pretty much immediately what you're talking about. If we go back up, we're talking about clearly where they're under and overeating in terms of that. You can show them clearly where they're under and overeating around the serving sizes, giving them some good information, and here where they're eating and how that works out in terms of calorie spread across the day. So danger things you'd look out for there are large intakes at night when there's not a lot of activity going on. That's really dangerous, particularly for our weight loss clients. All right, getting into the last two little bits of the assessment here, eating around exercise. Current recommendations for eating around exercise. I'm going to chuck these in, and you're welcome to grab these off the video here. So we've covered this in class, that pre-eating we're looking for 100 to 200 Gs, mainly complex carbs. Okay, and that is, remember, that varies depending on how big you are, how much exercise you're looking to do, the intensity of the exercise and how long it goes for will dictate whether you go more towards the 100 or the 200. Okay. We also want to keep fat and protein to a minimum around this time frame, and of course the time frame is between, this should be eaten between 2 to 4 hours from exercise. And of course the time frame will differ depending on the GI of the food you're eating, the amount of fibre it has in it, that kind of stuff. And of course the time available. If you're having an early morning workout, you may not be able to fit all that in. During exercise, we know that only after 60 minutes of exercise would you consider consuming some simple carbs. And the rate there, you'll remember, is 30 to 60 G per hour after the first hour. Best probably taken in liquid form. Finally, post-training, we're looking at 1 gram per kg of body weight carbs, any type, okay. And of course that's again provided you're not on a weight loss journey and this workout's not done last thing at night. Okay, you also want to be trying to yield 20 to 30 grams of protein in most instances after a decent training. So if that's what you're supposed to be doing, the next step is to compare that to clients eating around exercise for each session of exercise they do. So if I go into the table here, I isolate on day 1. The first session he does here is Monday Fitness. I'm going to go up to 4 hours before 11:30, so I will count 7, it's 4.5 away. And you can see there that it's yielding 166 grams of carbs. Okay, so day 1, 4.5 hours prior to exercise. That means over the 4.5 hours prior to exercise consumes 166 G carbohydrate, which is good. The thing I would look at here is the amount of fat though. And you can see there that 49 grams of fat is too much, so 49 Gs, I wouldn't call that low fat, is too much fat to be eating. However, okay, he's not going for over 90 minutes according to this thing here, so we look at the post-eating. And of course I should have added in here post-training within an hour is ideal. And he's eaten pretty quickly after. And you can see that he's had about 80 grams of carbs, not far away from his 85 kilos. And he's had only 14 grams of protein, which is not enough. So I would say post-training 80 Gs carbs, which was okay, but only 15 grams protein. Okay, so you do the same thing for each exercise session. You've got the gym session number 2 there, and give the same details, and at the end you should be able to give me a summary of how they're doing against the pre, during and post recommendations. Alright, so the last part of analysis is a very short one. It's this one here, snack quality and timing. So all I want you to write about in this section here is, when do your clients snack? So when does the client snack? So the first question, and secondly is, what is the quality of snack food like? So if we dive into the example day here, we can see that there's a snack occurs mid-morning, so a couple of decent snacks here. We've got peanuts, almonds, raisins, carrot, so nothing too bad there. We've also got a banana, some cheese, and Rivetta crisp breads, so pretty good quality stuff there. Later in the afternoon, you can see multigrain toast and banana with some peanut butter. No big issues there. Obviously a protein shake after the gym there. And it's not really until late at night here. So coming back into the document here, what would I say about the diet we just looked at there? I would say that the client snacks regularly between meals, so both in the morning and afternoons. Most of the snack foods are considered nutritious, some whole grains, some fruits and vegetables, some cheese. Just the night snack, if it was a common theme, I'd mention that the night snack is A, not the best time to be snacking, and B, not the best quality food that he's choosing to snack on there. So obviously indicating that he gets home, opens the cupboards and has a bit of a forage last thing in the day. So yeah, generally pretty good snack food, but just that one snack that I'd be wary of there. So you can pause the video now and have a look at your own client's data. Tell me when they're snacking generally and what's the quality of snack food like. Okay, so now that we've done the analysis, it's time to produce a set of recommendations for our client. Okay, so these recommendations are going to come directly from the analysis that we've done so far. So if we had an example from here, let's say we had looked at 4 days of my client's data here, and it followed the same theme as what you're seeing on here. So plenty of cereals and breads, lots of fruits and veggie, dairy in about the right zone, meat in about the right zone, just a little bit high on the high calorie, non-nutritious type snacks. So the only key pointer I can really pull out of this table at all is the high calorie foods. Now you may have more, you may have 5 things to talk about there if there are improvements to be made. So my first bullet point is my client could try and refrain from eating too many high cal, low nutrition snacks, particularly late at night. Now I put the dot in there because for every bullet point we put in, I want some rationale behind that. Okay, so the rationale for this one for me would be these are needless calories at this time of night and could lead to unwanted weight gain. Brackets, of course I'm talking about fat. Okay, so that would be the extent of a bullet point that I'd be looking for to draw out of that there. Now you might have to talk about not enough fruit and vegetables. Well, if they were low in fruit and veggies, you've got to think to yourself, well, what's the issue with that? And of course, the issue there is the vital micronutrients, the vitamins that they're probably missing out on there. Okay, if they're low in meat, we might be looking at key vitamins there around iron, for example. Protein may be a factor. Okay, and if they were low in grains, then of course we'd be considering things like the vitamins that are involved in grains as well, like the B vitamins are quite common in whole grains. So just a sentence of explanation. We carry on through the document and go to the next part of the analysis and say, well, what can we pull out of this? Now let's see here, they ate more unsaturated fat. That's good. So not too much to talk about there. The client ate less simple carbs than complex. That's good also. So not too much to talk about there either. And then we get to the amount of food, and again, if we followed a common theme, I'd probably kick off with the fact that I'm 300 over. Okay, so if this was consistent throughout 4 days, I'm 300 calories over, I'd go down and put in a bullet point there about that. Carbs, you can see I'm under. Fat is probably the major issue there, where we're just about doubling the fat requirement. So a couple of bullet points to come out of there. My client is eating around 300 excess calories a day. Of course, if this translated over 4 days of eating, again, this could lead to unwanted fat gain over time. Now, quite simply, if we go back into here, an easy fix for this would of course be, what is that up to there? 346. There's 350 calories at night, unnecessary calories that don't need to be there. So I recognize that, and I could say in here, this could be easily rectified by removing the night snack. Alright, what else did I find out of that? I found out that my fat was too high. So again, I'd write in a comment here that my client's fat intake is too high compared to the recommendations that they should be having. I'd recommend that they reduce this. Again, I might be able to indicate certain things in the diet where that would be done easily. So if I went into the diet here, and of course I'd be looking primarily for saturated fats here, if I could get rid of them. So the potato chips, bang, there's 10, that could disappear straight away. As I scan through the rest of them, we've got the cheese there at 16, and then we've already got a dose of peanuts and almonds up here. There's probably no need for the peanuts down here at another 12. So already I've identified 10, 20, 30, almost 40 grams that could disappear from that fat total right there, just by going through. Okay, so a good place to make a suggestion in here. You carry on your way through the document. Okay, so we would have covered that one now. We then look at the timing, then you skip meals. We should talk about the importance of having those meals in place, and then we could talk about the calorie balance through the day and whether they're eating the majority of the calories in a spread-like fashion, or whether it's really lumping around one portion of the day, which is not ideal. So again, read your own summary, find what you said there, and if you think there's improvements to be made, then talk about them in bullet point form with a sentence of rationale after that, discussing why that's important to change this. Of course, you'll finish up with the eating around exercise. If there's any improvements that could be made there, you should definitely talk about them, and of course the snack timing as well. So from that, you should easily be able to find 5 quality points or more with a sentence of reasoning. It's really important that you put that reasoning in. This is where you use that applied knowledge that you've learned over the course so far. And this is the set of recommendations that you would effectively give the client. So they could look at the tables above, they could see in black and white or colour where they're going wrong, and then a set of recommendations that they could start to implement. Now your last step is use those recommendations now to build a one-day example diet for the person. Now obviously if we were doing this for real, we'd obviously give more than 1 day with some eating options and that kind of stuff, but this is a good starting point here. I want to show you how to build a day's eating based on the client data there. Okay, so where do we start? Well, the first place we start is with the recommended intake numbers that we'd worked out. So here are my numbers from my calculations I'm going to take. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to find a blank sheet over here, and I'm going to paste those guys in. Okay, now this is what I've got to work with, and I want to finish as close to these values as I can in my day's eating, okay, to match the client's needs. Now, there's a couple of little caveats for this here. Okay, I don't mind, for example, if you're a few grams low in fat and a few grams high in protein, for example. It is quite hard to keep protein down. You'll find this when you're building your client's diet, that protein's in virtually everything in small amounts at least, and big amounts in some things. So protein and fat, I don't mind if a few calories are missing from fat and then are put into protein, maybe even as high as 15-20% over. The carbs, I would like us to try and get as close as we can with those, just to show you, this is the energy requirements we've decided these people need for their exercise. And 468 grams of carbs, like you see here, is quite a bit fit in. So I want you to get a feeling for how that might work in around a person's daily eating. All right, the next thing would be to draw up a calculator here. And for an active population, I think a good starting point when we're thinking about how to build a day's eating is to work with meals. And a good starting point for meals for me would be about 2/3 of daily calories for an active person who's exercising on a given day. So if we take the calorie value here, 3205, if I want 2/3 of that figure, I could times that by 0.67, or 66.666%, 2/3, and that'll give me a figure of 2147 calories. Now there's 3 good meals in a day, divide that by 3, and that means that the average meal size for this particular person should be around that 700 calorie mark. Okay, and obviously smaller people with smaller calorie loads are going to have smaller meal requirements. Okay, so we're going to use that 700 as a basis for building our day. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with our main meals, breakfast, lunch and dinner. And I'm going to start by going back into the diet. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my client's diet here. Now, I've got 1 day that I'm using here, and you've got 4. So somewhere across those 4 days, hopefully there's a decent brekkie, a decent lunch, and a decent dinner. And even if there's not, maybe there's components of a decent lunch, breakfast or dinner. So you might be able to take some cereal from 1 day, add a piece of fruit from another day, that kind of thing. And we should use as much of the client's diet as possible, provided those foods that we're choosing are nutritious, and that's because the client already eats them. Now, in rare situations, you're going to find diets where almost nothing's usable. The food that's put on that diet that they've been eating is wholly unsuitable for the client. But in most cases, it's about tweaking, moving stuff around, and adjusting the serving sizes and that to fit the numbers that we need. So I'm going to start here. There's nothing wrong with rolled oats, some Sultana bran, and some calci-trimmed milk here. Okay, particularly if I've got an active day ahead of me. So if I look at the calorie content of that, I'm coming in about 532, so I'm a little bit short, but I'm going to take all of that and the timing, because that's when the person eats their breakfast. And what I'm going to do, go back into this blank one here, and I'm just going to paste. And you'll notice that by taking everything and then pasting in, all the colours come with it, all the ratings, all the saturated fat, all the simple carbs come across with it. Now, I think a good thing that I could add in there would be a piece of fruit. And a piece of fruit could go quite nicely with rolled oats and Sultana bran. In fact, you could chuck it on top if you wish. In fact, I do in my morning brekkie. So I might go looking for a banana. And then again, I'm taking the whole lot. Oops. I'm going to whack it in. And chuck that in there. And this is going to take our calorie load up to 631. Okay. Now I'm thinking of something else that could raise the calorie load a little here, but I'm actually looking at that as a breakfast, and I'm thinking, that's a decent whack of food there. 1.5 cups Sultana bran, a couple of rolled oats, and some milk and a medium banana. I'm going to leave that as it is for the moment. So next meal to look at is lunch. I get a sense of the day's eating here. That lunch was about 12:30, and I'm going to use the same day, including the exercise and etc. So what I might actually do is just paste the exercise across. Now you'll have 4 days that you're looking at. Choose 1 day, an exercise day that the person's doing, and of course whack their exercise in at those points too, because that's going to help determine how we spread the calories across the day. So I've just popped those exercise sessions in, and we can keep them in mind as we're going. So I'm thinking good strong carb start to the day, 4 hours, roughly 4 hours, so just over 4 hours away from exercise, but I can still count these carbohydrates towards this exercise session here. The next intake would be at 12:30, and if you look at that, it's going to be a post-workout feed, so we've got to think of carbs and protein in this meal here. Again, I'm going to go back into the day that I already had, and I see a sandwich there with an apple and some rice crackers, so it looks like a good whack of carbs. Maybe a little light on the protein, but we might be able to fix that. So let's use the basis of that meal, 12:30, copy it in, get across to here, whack that in there. There we go. If we look at the total calories of this one here, you can see 449 is a bit short. Now I look at that amount of food for a relatively big guy, 85 kilo guy, very active, couple of workouts a day, and I think 1 sandwich, an apple and a row of rice crackers. Okay, I'm sure a guy of that size could handle that. What about something simple like doubling the sandwich? So if we just look at the figures here, what we're probably a bit short on, we've got about 15 grams of protein there, right? We've got 2 choices here really. We could up the meat, okay, and get some more protein into that diet, or we could, of course, double what we've got already. So if I was to go to 4 slices of the multigrain toast bread there, that would take me to 4, 71.2, and 15.6. So I just doubled everything. You'll notice how the calories changed there. Then I'm looking at the ham and I'm thinking, right, what have I got? Even if I've just done that with the bread, do I yield enough? We're getting into the 20 zone here, so yeah, simply doubling. 6 slices there, 3.4, 1.2, 8.6. Obviously the lettuce would double as well. Another little handful of lettuce there. And you can see I'm just going through and doubling all the values there. 1 becomes 2, 10 becomes 20. Let's finish these off. Okay, take a look at that now. We've come in at 737, so we've hit our 700 marker that we're looking for there. Okay. Now, there's options here. If a person looked at that and said, wow, okay, that's a lot of food. I don't know if I can handle all that food in one go. I'm pretty sure that this guy could. 85 kilo fit, young, active male on the back of a pretty hard circuit-based workout. I'm sure could deal with 2 sandwiches, a row of rice crackers and an apple. So I'm comfortable with that, but he may like to spread it out a little, you know, have a sandwich here and a sandwich a little later on. But we'll roll on with this for the moment. We've got 1 meal to go, dinner time, so we go beyond the gym. Obviously, dinner was happening post-gym. We go back and see what sort of time he was eating dinner on this day, and you can see it was about 6:30. So I'm going to pop in 6:30 here. So a little trick that will come in useful, team, when you're running out of rows, and you can see here for dinner, there's probably not going to be enough rows for dinner here. You can insert rows, so you just need to right-click, hit insert, entire row, and then my favourite little button there is Control Y, which means do it again. So you can see I've inserted 3 rows here. Now, the important thing is we've got to take some equation cells with us as well. So I'm going to copy 3 rows of those equation cells and I'm going to paste them in there. And I just need to check that it works by placing a 1 in the fat cell and moving it out, and it should turn to 9 calories, you can see there. So you can always tell a cell is working if the calories change when you put some numbers in. So I've got some room for DINs there. Once again, I'm going to tap into the dinner I already have on here because I don't think it was such a bad option. And again, you'll have 4 days to look at to see if you can find a good option here. So I'm looking at that dinner. It's tortillas, some veggies, some meat and a bit of sauce there, and it comes to just over 700. So very lucky for me that I can use virtually all of this. You may need to build a few things into yours depending on the quality of your person's food. Now, I'm a little unsure that that's going to fit in, so what I might just do is try it from here. Oops, wrong place. We'll go from here. Paste that in, she just fits in, so I have to put the gym back in at 4:30 in here, so PM gym. Alright, so this has some grains. Just to change things up a wee bit, you know, we should be looking at getting some more complex carbs in there, the whole grain tortilla versus a whole meal. We could even look at whole grain rice crackers there, but again, it was post-workout, so it's not so important in that bit there. We've got plenty of complex carbs happening up here anyway. Okay, so what have I achieved so far? I have achieved 2100 calories on the back of 3 virtually 700 calorie meals, so I've got some good balance going on across the meals here. Both of my meals towards the end here are post-workout meals, and that's why I don't have an issue with some decent carbohydrate on board at night time here, because I'm straight off the gym and my muscles will be wanting to suck those carbs right up post-training. So what am I left with? I'm left with 1,000 calories that need to be spread in different places around the day, and of course I've got 2 workouts that I have to take care of. So my next port of call is to go up here and work out what I'm going to do between 7 and 11:30, because 4.5 hours is quite a long time. I'm currently sitting on, if I highlight the carbs there, about 104, so I can do with a few more carbs in this part here. So I'm going to chuck in maybe halfway between this feed here, something like 10 o'clock. And that's going to give me a good hour and a half to digest whatever I have in this point here, so it would have to be relatively moderate GI going into there. So I'm diving back in here, having a look at the snacks that my client ate here, and you can see here the banana, rye crackers, no problem there. The cheese, probably not ideal prior to Monday Fitness. We'll bump up that fat content a little bit there, so we want to keep them out of it a wee bit. But something like a banana and these crisp bread rye crackers could work. We could find something else to put on those that isn't going to hinder the absorption of those things. So we'll simply copy these guys here, get back over to this bit here and paste them in this mid-morning phase here. So, I'm thinking of, I don't need a lot more carbohydrate there. I look at that total there, 150, that's plenty prior to Monday Fitness there. Maybe all I need there is or a teaspoon of, maybe 2 teaspoons of Vegemite, something like that, right? It's not going to be hugely calorie dense. It's going to put a bit of taste on those crackers, and that'll be fine. Now, where do I find that? Now, this could be a good opportunity to dive in and have a look at the Concise Food Table tab that we've got here. So I don't have any stats for Vegemite because my client didn't have any. We'll see if we can get lucky on there. So we go in, we go Control A, which highlights the whole document, Control F, which brings up a search box here. And if I was to try my luck with Vegemite and hit Find All, it didn't like it. It didn't like where it is. Sometimes you can get away with putting little parts like veggie. It didn't like that either. Okay, so if I was to put in the word spread, it didn't like that either. So Marmite, try a few things out. Okay, and as I suspected, it's not really for these kind of things that you can easily find the label for. What I'd do in this instance, if I didn't have the Vegemite in front of me, is I'd get into Google here, Vegemite. I would look up some images. I'd see that it is Vegemite, and I'd also add the word maybe label. And maybe should have put nutrition. There we go, nutritional label. So I'm virtually looking at a jar of Vegemite here. And what can I see? Well, not much actually. We better get a clearer one. Going to be any clearer? There we go. So, what have we got? Serving size 5 grams, which is a teaspoon. I was having 2. So I look on here, it's going to yield me 2.6 grams of protein, less than a gram of fat, and less than a gram of carbs. So head back in, nice easy search there using the labels. Head back onto my sheet, I recommended, and it was 2.6 grams of protein, less than a gram. I just usually put in as something like 0.5 there. Okay, so it'd add another 16 calories. Alright, so leading into Monday Fitness, I'm having 150 odd grams of carbs for my client there. I've got relatively low fat, if you look through that, relatively low protein on this side here, so it's a carb-based meal. Should clear in time for the workout. Post-training, I've got to make sure that I'm trying to get a gram per kilo at least of carbohydrates in. You can see there's plenty there at 124. I would argue excess, but again, we're already in the pre-exercise window for the next gym session. And I'm about 4 hours away, so this meal not only is replacing the carbs that I used up in the last session, but also preparing for the next session there. I'm also trying to get 20 to 30 grams of protein into that feed. You can see at 27 grams at the sum down here that I'm hitting that target quite nicely. If I go down now, have a look at the bottom. Again, I've got a running total of what's going on. So I'm 800 calories short, 20 grams of fat short, 123 grams of carbs short, and 41 grams of protein short for my daily intake here. And I've still got the hours between 12:30 and 6:30 available, so a 6-hour window here. The obvious thing to do here is that the workout is 4 hours after that one. I need a sort of midpoint in here. So I might look at a 2:30. I might even look at a small 2:30 p.m. I might even look at a small 3 p.m. Snack in here just to make sure I'm topped up and ready to go for the gym workout there. Again, let's dive into the client's days and see what there are. So, always a fan of a piece of fruit. Could maybe double up on another row of rice crackers there, sorry. Jump into the workout here. If I was to whack those two things in there, get an apple and some rice crackers in here, and it takes our total yield of carbs again up to around that 150 mark prior to exercise. Okay. So heading down, we are getting a bit closer here. Okay, with the 674 calories to go, and like I say, this is a fairly energetic person of a reasonable weight that we're talking about here, who's really trying to build muscle and get the best out of their workout. So yes, it is a lot of food, but this is what we've determined they need based on their calculations. About this point, I start thinking, well, what do I need? What do I need to balance out this diet a little more? Okay, I've still got a bit of protein to play with. The obvious next thing I look at is, what about post-training? I noticed on my clients' diet intake that they had a protein shake post-intake, and we've got plenty of room for protein in the diet. So if I went in and selected the same protein powder that they were using here, the one consideration I would give though is in that post-exercise window, again, the replenishment of the carbs at this point here. And yep, there's some carbs coming later on in the day as well, but that immediate phase, maybe a little bit of simple carbs, that kind of thing in there. Personally, this is where I start to think to myself, well, what would I have in that sort of space there? I've had plenty of, the rice crackers and the breads and those kind of things there. Something easily absorbable. For me, I have a go-to, which is a Pam's chocolate creamed rice. Fairly high GI sort of food there, going to clear pretty quickly. And what we're looking for, if you remember, is about 1 gram per kilo of carbohydrates in that 1 hour window after. And I can tell you that this particular one, I've got it sitting right in front of me here, has 85 grams of carbs, just 2.5, sorry, that's the wrong way, 7 grams of fat, 7.2 grams of fat, and it also has 9 grams of protein. So what I'm getting as a yield there is 29 grams of protein, so there's my 30 grams of protein hit. I'm getting my gram per kilo of carbohydrates, and if we look down the bottom here, I've achieved my carb targets, and a lot of these carbs have come in between, before, in between, and immediately after the time of exercise. And you can see that at the night time carbs there, there's a total of 66 sort of grams of carbs coming in from about 6:30, and that's the end of the eating for the day at that point. Alright, so I'm certainly going to look to replenish my carbohydrate stores. This is not a weight loss person who's looking to avoid putting on body fat overnight. This is a person who's used their muscles vigorously in a couple of workouts today and is looking to replenish them before he does the same thing again tomorrow. Okay, so I'm 140 short. I'm just shy on protein. I've got a little bit of fat to play with there. Now, what did I say I was going to do in my recommendations? Now, obviously, if I have a look at my count ups here, I've got plenty of grains. You can see there 1, 2, 3.5, 4.5, 4 more there is 8.5, 9, 10. I'm at 10 plus. Okay, I'm looking at, in terms of fruit and veg, a banana, 2 bananas. There's 2, 2 and a bit, 3 and a bit, 4 and a bit, 5 and a bit, 6 to 7. Okay, so I'm in the right zone there for those. Oops, I just forgot to highlight my cream rice there. Okay, and I could add probably a quarter to half of a dairy serve in there for that one too. And that's the thing I'm noticing, that I'm probably down on a little. I've got 1 serve of dairy there, and I should probably get another one in. Okay, so I had that 3 o'clock sort of zone there. I was looking for something light and quite easily absorbed. And this might be a good time for something like a pottle of yogurt. Okay, so I need the values for a pottle of yogurt. I could try the concise food tables, but it's better to get it from a better source than that. Here's some yogurt here. If I was to chuck in Meadow Fresh, and hopefully the site comes up and we go to the range of products. So often the best place to go is to the actual site itself. Okay, if I was to get in there, what am I looking for? I am looking for just normal yogurt. I'm not finding it. Yogurt, no, there it was. It was the Greek yogurt. Okay, so here's sort of a standard yogurt, I guess. It's I went for a passion one there. You get the nutritional information straight off the website here, so it's often the best place to go. Just remember as well, once you have done this a few times, you have a database of client information that you know you have accurate information on. You can tip into different clients' diet logs and essentially steal the facts out of those. Okay, so 125 serving pot is what I was thinking of there. So we can see there's 3.3 grams of fat, 15.8 for carbs, and 5.3. 3.3, 15.8, 5.3. Back into here. See how good the memory is. 15.8, 5.3, and of course I had to have forgotten one, didn't I? The fat is 3.3. And there we go. I've got my serves of dairy, I've got my fruit and veg up to point, I've got loads of grains in there as well. I'm looking at 2 to 3 serves of meat, which is fine. And I have no crap essentially in there except for little bits and pieces in there. And some would argue things like cream rice and that are low nutritional value, but immediately post-training I don't have an issue with that. If I look at my numbers now, I'm 26 calories off my target, I'm slightly under in fat, slightly over in carbs, slightly under in protein. I have no issues with being off by just that much. The next thing I need to check is the things that I've added. Do they add things like saturated fat? In this case here, yeah, there's a little bit more there in the cream rice. The pot of yogurt has a little as well. But I've also taken out things like the cheese and that kind of stuff, so it should balance out quite nicely. And I'm seeing nothing else there. So a quick add up of these things: 3 to 4 to 10 to 13, 14, 21, 5, 26, 30. Yep. So less than half saturated fat there. Again, relatively happy with that. In terms of simple carbs, the cream rice would have to add into the simple carbs there. Oops, get the right colour. Just going up, powder, yogurt would have to also get into the simple carbs side of things there. The rice crackers are in there already. Yeah, so that's about it. Looking at that, 13, half of this figure here, 47, 58, about 60, 80, 100, 120 odd, 160 odd, 170, 180, 185 out of 482 is a pretty good balance of simple to complex carbs there. Again, pretty happy. Okay, so I'm looking at my mix of carbs, protein and fat. You can see it's pretty close to what I've actually said because I've got my numbers almost bang on in terms of the amounts of fat, carbs and protein that I need there. The last step that I'd do, guys, is I'd go back and check my recommendations. So you would have a full list here. My client could try and refrain from eating too many high-calorie, low-nutrition snacks. I'm pretty confident I've achieved that recommendation. There's no late-night snack. The client is eating about 300 excess calories a day. I've fixed that. When we talked about excess fat, I'm now under in fat. Okay, and any of the other issues that I'd sort of brought up, I would expect you to have fixed over that time. So there's an example of how to build a day. I've been pretty lucky with my client because they were already eating quite well. You might have to make some more drastic changes to some of your other clients' diets when you're building this day. And if you do and you're looking for things to build, I just want to reiterate the use of this food table here. So for things like fruit and veggies and lean cuts of meat, etc., it's excellent. You can go Control A, Control F. Let's say I'm looking for chicken. I whack in chicken. I have Find All. If I pull out from the corner here, it has every reference. This one has Find All. There we go. Every reference to chicken from eggs. And I'm looking for chicken breast, so I just come on down. There's my chicken breast. It's grilled. If I click on it, it takes me directly to it in the document here. Chicken breast grilled. Okay, if I was to go down one, you would see here that it shows, chicken breast grilled, 100 grams worth, with the figures along the top here of fat, carbs and protein. That's what I'm after, 4.6 grams of fat, no carbs, and 31.2 grams of protein. It does suggest a single breast, but we'd have to know the weight of the chicken breast that we're weighing there. Okay, so it's got everything. You see your chicken breast roasted, fat and skin on, roasted in the oven, all kinds of ways of cooking. So a lot of fruits and vegetables, meats and those kind of things that you can't find on the labels from the manufacturers and stuff are quite useful. I'll just show you one more example here. If I look for an apple, hit the Find All, there's every reference to an apple in there. I'm after not after cider, apple, flesh, skin, raw, combined varieties, just to give me an overview there. Takes me into the fruits. There's my apples. and it says one fruit about 7 centimeters diameter or 100 grams worth, and I can grab the stuff straight out. And the cool thing about this, you can actually copy the fat, carbs, protein, go back into your recommended diet page, for example, and you can essentially paste it. And if I use an example here, I can just paste that directly in, and it will transfer the calories across for me. Alright team, so that's in a nutshell, a quite long nutshell, I admit. It took a bit longer than I thought it would there, but hopefully you find that useful. Hopefully you've been pausing your way as you go through, and it's been able to give you a good overview. Remember, we have been talking about this stuff in class. This is just so when you're away from me, you can tap into this video at any point and see what's going on. Hope it's helpful. Cheers. Catch you.